had a wonderful time last week, did we not, with the baptism, and everything went well. The rain held off, and everything went great. To be honest with you, I don't know, maybe Katie was the one that filmed it. Did you record it? Put it on Facebook. Put it on our page. We have a Facebook page, and I tell you, got lots of views and things, and hopefully it touched some lives. We're not out to promote our name. We're out to promote Jesus Christ, and we just want to show people what that's like, and just pray for that. It's still out there, and maybe somebody will come upon it and wonder what dunking people in the river is all about. You know how crazy that looks? We're Christians. We've been around church and stuff for years. We understand baptism. Think about people who's never been around it. What are these crazy people doing? You know? And maybe that will spark some interest. Maybe they'll ask somebody. And what a good day. Hey, our notes this morning are on YouVersion. If you have a smartphone or smart device, it's on live links. And if not, the bulletins are in the back table back there. They'll have the sermon notes on them as well. I want to talk today about a subject that's a little hard for me to talk about. As you know, maybe if you gathered from me that I like to be real. I'm not much into being fake. And sometimes the real subjects are hard subjects because they become personal subjects. And I mean that's what Jesus did, wasn't he? When he walked the earth, he talked about real stuff. And that's how Jesus made large crowds into small crowds. He was pretty good at that. And people didn't always like what he had to say because he became personal with them. And believe me, I approach subjects like this with insecurity. That's me. But I want to talk about a subject today that's probably a little sensitive to some of you, maybe a little sensitive to most of us. If you've been in church for very long at all, you have probably experienced this in one form or another. If you haven't, I don't know how you've avoided it. But what I'm talking about is being offended by the church family. And unfortunately, it happens. Unfortunately, people who are offended by the church family tend to think that they're the only ones this happens to, and it's certainly not. It happens a lot, unfortunately. I'm afraid it's very common. It is something that has happened ever since there has been church. That people are offended sometimes by other Christians. I mean, think about it a minute. Think about how new the church was. Think about the New Testament church. Think about how new the church was in Acts 6. Okay? That's pretty new. This is an apostle-started church. Okay? The apostles were there. All right? And this was a time where, you talk about the church being alive. The Bible says that they were selling their possessions and giving to the church so that anybody that had need could receive things. And they had set up this distribution of food every day. And there were some in the church who were upset, who became offended because they felt the distribution of food was unfair. They felt that some of the widows were being overlooked. I mean, think about how early New Testament church that was. I mean, this is early. But yet, the offense in church is happening. So as long as you have people, it's going to happen. You know, and then we can continue through the New Testament, and we can find in the book of James where he says there's wars and fights among you. We find brothers and sisters in Christ not getting along. 1 Corinthians, there's instruction given that brothers in Christ should not take each other to court. You know, to even make a statement like that, there was obviously some things going on, and And so there's lots of examples like that all through the New Testament. This is nothing new. Now there are different dynamics that surround this kind of offense. If you remember, I don't know what's it been, a few weeks ago I talked about depression and discouragement. And it's very common for people to get discouraged because we place expectations on others. We place high expectations on others, and then when they don't meet our expectations, we become discouraged. Or we become offended because they didn't do what I think they should have done. And, I mean, is that really right, or is that really fair to the person that you've placed those expectations upon? Sometimes we can be our own worst enemy in this thing. I think often in church, and I have seen this before, anybody that's been part of church for very long knows that sometimes the offense is a product of miscommunication. Sometimes you just didn't understand what that person said. Sometimes it's a miscommunication. Believe me, it's a miscommunication. I've been up here at times, and after I've preached, I've sat down and thought, did I actually say that? That wasn't what I meant to say, but I said that. But you know, miscommunication can certainly happen like this, and it can certainly at times offend people. And then there are times when people are just downright rude and insensitive. Not Christians. We can't be downright rude and insensitive, right? At times, it certainly is. We say things that we shouldn't. We're judgmental when we shouldn't be. And it happens. It happens, I guarantee you it happens. And regardless of the reason for this offense, it's painful. Whether you're maybe more at fault than you think, or whether you're not, either way, if you're offended by those you trust, especially in church, it becomes very painful. And most people are not likely to return for more pain. Okay? So, where does that leave us? What's our responsibility as a child of God and as an organized body of believers? What is our responsibility? One of the tragedies is that these folks often leave, and because they're gone, they're soon forgotten. I don't even like to make that statement, but it's true. It's true. This reminds me of a story that we find in 2 Samuel 9. David was king of Israel. David was king of Israel. He'd been king of Israel for about 10 years. And things were going very well under David's leadership. Well, I know as well as they have been, and probably as well as they ever will be in Israel. They were going pretty well under David's leadership. And in the very first verse of chapter 9, we find David asking a question. And I'm not exactly sure why it took 10 years, why it took so long before David asked this question. But the question he asked was, is there anyone remaining from Saul's family I can show kindness to because of Jonathan? And that is our question for the day. That's what our message is basically going to revolve around, is that question. David says, is there anybody left in Saul's family that I can show kindness to because of Jonathan? Now, for this question to make sense, we've got to go back in time a little bit. I'm sure that most of us probably know the story of David and Goliath. Okay? The young man David, he slays the giant Goliath. Well, that happened about 30 years prior to this time. Okay? Now, whenever David killed the giant, he pretty much automatically became part of the Israelite army. David became very successful in the Israelite army. And King Saul was the king at this time. Saul was the first king. He's the king at this time. And Saul had a son. His name was Jonathan. Now, David and Jonathan were best buds, okay? They were best friends. They did everything together. They fought together, they bled together, they did everything together. They were a great example of what a true friendship is. And the Bible even says that David was successful in everything that Saul sent him to do. And that was great. That was great. This young man David became a great leader, very successful in his campaigns, was successful in everything that Saul, the king, sent him to do until everybody began to like David more than Saul. Even Saul's servants began to like David more than Saul. And then came jealousy. Saul became very jealous of David. Saul sought to kill David. And I'm going through this story very quickly. He sought to kill David. He became just obsessed with killing David. He spent 8 years trying to kill David. Until one day, Saul and his sons were killed in a battle with the Philistines. Now, it's very common at this time, once the king is killed, opposing army comes in, kills the king. Now, in the king's palace, what the army usually did was they rushed into the king's palace and they killed any heir that the king may have. They killed anybody that would be loyal to the king. So they rushed the palace and basically just slaughtered everybody. It was just a normal thing that you did whenever you killed a king to take over the kingdom. So when the news came out that Saul and his sons had got killed in this battle, at the palace, everybody was just, they were ready to get out of there. Well, Jonathan had a son, and his name was Mephibosheth. Now, why his name was Mephibosheth, I have no idea. Why would you name a kid that? But that's what his name was. He was 5 years old at the time, and his nurse grabbed him up, running out of the palace, and the Bible doesn't exactly say what happened, but somehow she dropped him, and because of that, it injured both feet, broke both feet, and he was injured for life. Okay? Now, soon after that, a civil war broke out between those who were loyal to David, because they wanted David to be king. David was anointed to be king, and those of the house of Saul. And then eventually, David became king of Israel. That's going through that story very quickly. And now, where we're at takes place basically 10 years after. Okay? After David becomes king. Now, I'm not exactly sure, like I said, why it took this long for David to ask this question. I'm not exactly sure why nobody had told David that Jonathan had a living son. Maybe they were afraid, that David might do something to him or something, since he was an heir to Saul. But anyway, we're going to read from 2 Samuel 9, 3 through 7. And you'll find 2 Samuel. It's in the Old Testament. It's between 1 Samuel and 1 Kings. It's 24 chapters. And if you'd like to turn there this morning, that'd be great. I'm going to read from that chapter, but I'm not going to read all of that chapter. Okay? Then King David said, is there not still someone of the house of Saul to whom I may show kindness, the kindness of God? And Ziba said to the king, there is still a son of Jonathan who is lame in his feet. So the king said to him, where is he? And Ziba, I don't know, said to the king, indeed he is in the house of Achor, and his son Amiel is in Lo-debar. I have trouble with these Old Testament words, sorry. He is in Lo-debar. The king David sent and brought him out of the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, from Lo-debar. Now, Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, had come to David. He fell at his face and prostrated himself before David and Mephibosheth. And he answered, here is your servant. So David said to him, "Do not fear. I will surely show you kindness for Jonathan your father's sake, and will restore to you all the land of Saul your grandfather, and you shall eat bread at my table continually." Okay. In the Bible, especially it seems like in the Old Testament, the names really meant things. You know, God even changed the names sometimes of people and places if there was something that it represented, something that it was to be remembered by. Now, the place that Mephibosheth was called Lodabar. Lodabar. I thought that's what we did when we played limbo. Lodabar. Wait, Lodabar means the barren place. The barren place. I think everybody has a Lodabar. I think everybody has been there before. Maybe you're there right now. Maybe you're in that barren place. Mephibosheth was in Lodabar. He was in that barren place. He had been forgotten. David was such a good friend to Jonathan, but yet here is his son. He didn't even know anything about him. He had been forgotten. He was wounded and forgotten. Now, I think most of us, like I said, we've been in a Lodabar. We've been there, or we're there right now, or maybe we're trying to get out of there. That place where we feel like we've been forgotten, abused, offended. That place where disappointment and discouragement thrives. There are many different reasons why we find our Lodabar. And we may be shaped by those. You know, the bad things that we go through, the hard times that we go through, we're shaped by those. We may not want to be, but we are. But if we do not want to reside in Lodabar, we can't let it define us. And that's number 2. We can't let those circumstances define who we are. Okay, you've been dealt a bad hand. Okay, these bad things has happened to you. You know, some things are out of our control and they happen. And we find ourselves in that barren place, in that Lodabar. But unless you want to be that angry person all your life, unless you want to be that person who is shaped and stay that way all your life, you can't let it define you. I'm encouraged by what David said about his attitude and his willingness to seek out those who have been left out. To seek out those who have been left out. David brought him out of this Lodabar and treated him with great love, generosity, and gave him a place at his table. What does that mean? What does that mean? He restored his grandfather's and father's land and possessions and all that to him. But David gave him a place at his table. Who ate at David's table? David's family. David's sons. So not only did he take him out, he sought him out, he took him out of the Lodabar, he took him out of that barren place and gave him all of this stuff, showed him love and generosity, but he also treated him as if he was family. Wow. Man, that's quite a message, I think, to the church. How many Mephibosheths are out there who have been innocently wounded? That's number 3. Was it David's fault? Was any of this David's fault? Was it David's fault that Mephibosheth's feet were broken? Was it his fault that all his family was killed? It wasn't David's fault. He didn't have anything to do with it. But yet David found the responsibility. He felt that he had the responsibility to make it right. To go find him and make this right. Why? Because of the relationship that David had with his father. Do you know anybody that's living in Lodabar? Man, I tell you, when you think about us crazy Christians, especially if you've attended church for very long, we all know people who have been offended and left. We all know. How many are out there? You know, we talk about, well, today, you know, we got to find out new ways and different ways to attract people and bring them into the church, because most of our churches are plateauing, or either they're declining in numbers, and so we got to do all these things. Well, how many people are out there that has been a part of the church, that are children of God, that are not attending church because they have been offended and they're gone and everybody has forgotten about them? How many are out there? If we grabbed them and brought them into churches, we probably couldn't hold them all. Who's out there? They're feeling their separation from God. Maybe they've been wounded from circumstances outside of their control. They've been offended by the church. Maybe abused by someone who claims to be a Christian. Or maybe there's been a loss of someone close to them and they just can't understand why God would do something so cruel. How many Mephibosheths are out there? And they need to be rescued by someone who has a relationship with their Heavenly Father. Guys, you come on. How many of us are willing to have the attitude of David and seek out those who have been left out? The way this chapter begins is like David just gets up, you know, it feels like, it doesn't really say it, but it just feels like David gets up one morning and says, you know, is there anybody in Saul's family left that I can love on? Anybody in Saul's family left that I can show kindness to? We ever have that attitude? You ever get up some morning and say, you know, is there anybody left that's been offended, that's been hurt, that's living in that Lodabar that I can do something for? I can show kindness to. I can help. Are we willing? And let me tell you, I'll tell you right now, that's a scary attitude to have. Because what comes with that? Man, when people's been hurt, when people has experienced pain, it's hard to deal with them. I guarantee it is. There's a great number of ministries out there today. There's ministries for everything today. All kinds of subjects. But you know, I just don't see, maybe you know of one, but I just don't see too many ministries that are reaching out to those who have been left out. Reaching out to those who have been offended in the church. Do you know of one? But few and far between, I'm afraid. And the reason why is because it's hard. It's hard. And is there a need for it? Think about this a minute. Think about how many churches are in this country. Think about how many churches are in this county. Let's just bring it down home. Think about how many churches are in this county. And if you went in every one of those churches and you asked somebody who has attended there for very long, have you ever had anybody that attended church here and got offended and left? And it doesn't matter the circumstances. Sometimes it could be their own circumstances. Sometimes they could, you know, like I said, they could put, they think people should do things that they shouldn't have done. You know, they could have been their own worst enemy. Or there could have been some things that actually was wrong that happened to them. But how many people do you know that got offended and left church? And if we went to every church in the county, how many people would that be? Is there not a need for a ministry? I'm afraid our list would be pretty big. So where do we start? Well, we have to start where David started. We have to have that desire to go find someone. We have to have that true desire in our heart to go find someone. Show them love. Show them kindness. Show them mercy. Should it not be the priority of us to return anyone that we can to their Father's table? It's not easy. And I don't know what to do other than to start with an apology. Now, I don't know if anybody here today that I have offended. I may have. There may be some folks sitting here today that I have. If I had, I don't know about it. And I really don't know of anybody that I've offended that's gone since I've been the pastor. But like I said, sometimes I say things that later I think about and I think, man, did I really say that? Sometimes Geneva reminds me of those. Did you know you said, gosh, I didn't mean that. I want to apologize. Yeah, at least we can do that. I want to apologize to anybody here. That maybe I said something, maybe I did something that was out of line. And isn't that where we got to start? We just have to open ourselves up and say, you know, I don't know, maybe I was wrong, maybe I wasn't wrong. I don't care about the circumstances. If you're hurting, I'm hurting for you. I want to make it right. Man, if God's church just did that. If we just found one person, and just opened ourselves up to them. Said, I'm sorry. I think we'd change things, wouldn't we? Let's have that attitude of David. Where's somebody today that I can help? Where's somebody today that I can reach out to? Where's somebody today that I can pull them out of their low bar? Pull them out of that bottomless pit. They're never going to make it out unless they grab hold of my hand. And I'm off. You know what's scary about that? When we talk about the example of David, what did David do? He not only gave them stuff, not only pulled them out of there, gave them a different place to live, but it also tells us that David treated them as what? As family. That's where we draw the line, isn't it? I want to help this person, but I don't want to bring them into my house. I don't want them sitting at my table. That's too personal. What's God expecting us? So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that, and you guys can come and pray about this if you want. If anybody wants to come today and just say the same thing I did, and just say, hey, I don't know if I've offended anybody, but I apologize if I have. Isn't that a starting place? Or somebody wants to come and say, you know, I've been offended. Nobody knows this. Some people get offended in church and some people leave, but some people get offended in church and said, you couldn't drag me out of that church if you had a bulldozer. I don't know. We're all different. But God doesn't want His people to be at odds with each other. And God doesn't want His hurt people just to stay hurt for God. So let's start somewhere. Come if you want.